Let's make sure we're going live. My technical issues were the dogs were outside and I wanted to make sure they were fed and all that good stuff. So, oh. Okay, guys. So, what we, as promised today, we're going to talk a little bit about the next release of Adobe Captivate. And to be completely transparent with you, I'll tell you what I'm speaking from here, so you don't think that I'm holding something back or something is not being shared. But so at the most recent Adobe Live event, which would have been the Adobe Learning Summit in Las Vegas, there was some information shared, and very rudimentary, very basic, but obviously I'll share some of that with you today. What else would we have here? I'm going to address some of the comments that people have had when I posted about this live stream, just so that we could, get some people to join in. Obviously, I promote these live streams as I do them, and there was a lot of comments, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the end of something that will be probably controversial for some people. You know, obviously, with every new release of Adobe Captivate, there are features that are deprecated. Deprecated is simply dropped in favor of newer, different features. So it's important that, obviously the software supports as wide a range of people as possible. Again, I have no control over this. I'm a user just like you. I do have the opportunity to be a part of the pre-release from time to time, or I have been in the past. So hopefully I'll get a chance to see the software before it actually goes live. A lot of cases for me, this is how I produce some of the key tutorials on the new features when a new release of Adobe Captivate does go live. A lot of times I'm preparing videos for all of you while the software is just being in its final stages of testing. So, I'll be using the pre-release version of software to record those initial tutorials, and it's good and bad. I mean, it allows me to prepare to have 4 or 5, maybe more videos on the day of launch for a new release of Adobe Captivate. The downside is that I might capture something that, while true during the pre-release of the software, isn't true in the final release that you guys get to see. So I usually put some sort of disclaimer in the description of those videos, explaining that I use the pre-release software to record those videos, and some of the features may not perform exactly as demonstrated in the videos, but generally they'll be pretty close. So what else we got here? We got Jane Rogers, who's joined us this morning from Dallas. Welcome, Jane. We also have Luke Westwood from the UK. Hello, Luke. He's already throwing ideas up there. An object state library. Interesting thought. Not sure. Maybe you could write a little bit more about what you're thinking there, Luke. I'd like to explore that possibility. But first, let's talk a little bit about one of the common things that we hear almost every single time Adobe comes out with a new release of Captivate, and that's the feedback that I wish Adobe would just put Captivate in the Creative Cloud. And so I understand both sides of the argument for this. Number one, because obviously I want Captivate to be successful. So if it becomes part of Creative Cloud, I worry that it could not receive the development that it deserves. I don't mind paying the $35 a month or whatever it works out to in Canadian dollars for me to continue to support Adobe developing and improving this software. My worry is that if it became absorbed by Creative Cloud, that it would become one of those lesser known applications that eventually just goes away. The reality is the audience for Creative Cloud is much larger than the e-learning audience. So the risk, of course, of having Captivate become part of that is that the much larger audience may not want to pay extra for it. They're already paying between $50 a month or more, and you know, it's definitely a challenge. So we're already getting some ideas here in the chat, and I'll share those with you a little bit further. The other thing about including e-learning, you could actually create, and they had this for a while. When I first started purchasing my own copy of Adobe Captivate, I subscribed to, or I purchased the perpetual license while I was still a student. So that was a long time ago. Not really. I was a student as recently as within the last decade. I kind of float in and out of being a student and a teacher. So, but the experience I had is that I was upgrading some of my skills at the local community college and found myself looking through the software titles that were available to students and at student pricing. I thought, why not take advantage of this? And I saw Adobe's eLearning Suite. Now, this was a really cool product for only slightly more than what the full license of just Captivate was. It included Photoshop, Audition, Dreamweaver, Flash, and I think that's it. There might have been one or two others that I'm just not thinking of right now, but that was sort of the core set of applications that I could imagine myself using. Eventually, I became a full Creative Cloud user because, of course, I also, for obvious reasons right here, the idea of having access to Premiere Pro and After Effects and things like that, although I don't really use After Effects too much, but just the ability to do, you know, well, the titles, for example, are media templates that are from the Creative Cloud. So the titles and the end credits for my videos are all from having access to Creative Cloud. So I wouldn't do those if I didn't have Creative Cloud. So I mean, I get the point. You know, obviously, if you're paying $50 a month for Creative Cloud plus another $30 a month, but here's the way I look at it too. I want you guys to think about what you spend on Creative Cloud and Adobe Captivate in a given year. Compare it with anything else in the marketplace. Compare it with Articulate. Compare it with Articulate 360. Their full suite of products, and you think about what you spend for that, and think about what you still have to spend to get it to do other things. You know, like obviously, Articulate doesn't include a robust photo editing application. And while there is some video capabilities in the software, it is certainly not a full video editing suite either. So I don't mind spending the money, because when I look at the big picture, I look at my annual income, my revenue that I earn as a freelance e-learning designer developer. What I give Adobe, you know, when I'm not getting free software from them, I'll be fully transparent on that. But under traditional means, when I was just an e-learning designer developer, I was spending between, I guess it was around $80 a month for all the software that I used from Adobe. But I found another way, and it's to our mutual benefit, and I'll share that with you today as well. So let's take a look at some of the actual chat comments that are coming up here. Let's pop that out and just talk a little bit about what people are interested in. Let's see here. So I'd love to, this is going further on Luke's comment of an object state library. I love to be able to save states from one object in a library, which can be copied onto other objects. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be an excellent idea. I would like to see an enhancement to the copy and paste appearance to include all the possibilities of both inbuilt object states like visited state in the case of buttons, but as well as custom object states as well, so that I could copy and paste almost like a format painter and apply those different states. I can think of a couple of applications where I would use that quite easily. Yeah, and actually, Luke's pointing out another thing that's of great importance here. He's submitted the idea to Adobe as well. So it's all well and good if we're sitting around talking about what we'd like to see in Adobe Captivate. If you want to make sure that that actually happens, that you actually get that software update in Captivate, you gotta let Adobe know. In the description of all my videos are links to reporting bugs to Adobe Captivate, but or to Adobe on Adobe Captivate. Make sure you use the same link to give them suggestions for improvements to the software. I had an opportunity quite a few years ago. I don't know what version of Captivate it was, but it was before I started making YouTube videos. But they had reached out to me because they saw that I was a frequent user of Adobe Captivate. You know, they have access to a lot of telemetry, but they reached out to me. I don't know whether it was because I was commenting on the forums or what it was that I was doing. But the interesting thing is they asked if I had 30 minutes to share some ideas. And during that conversation, I said, you know what would be really useful to me? I use quiz questions not just as a final level 2 evaluation at the end of my e-learning, but I use quiz questions throughout my course. I zero out their score, and then I modified my course accordingly so that it wouldn't display the total number of questions, which would then be inaccurate. And I use these things, and I called them knowledge checks. You know, I would use these question slides as practice questions throughout the e-learning course. And I suggested to them, and this was probably around somewhere between Adobe Captivate 6 and 7, I suggested, wouldn't it be great if we could just have a question slide that its only purpose was to be a practice question? I said, I call them knowledge checks, but of course they could be called anything you like. Sure enough, in the next release of Adobe Captivate was knowledge check. So I don't know if I was the only person suggesting it. I doubt it. I seriously doubt that they would introduce a feature like that just based on one person's feedback. But you know, it's great to see that they do listen. I can tell you for sure that Adobe does listen to its clients, especially in the e-learning group. Let's take a look here. It drives me mad not being able to copy states. Yeah, I agree, Luke. That's for sure. In fact, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll build one of whatever I need with multi-states, and I'll duplicate it rather than, you know, use an object style or copy and paste the appearance. So yeah, John, they did have that at one point. They did have the e-learning suite that meets e-learning or e-developer needs. That was the Adobe e-learning suite. There was version 2. I don't remember version 1. Maybe I was not paying attention at the time. But I have a license to version 2. I have a license to version 2.5. And then they jumped ahead and went straight to the Adobe eLearning Suite version 6, and they just reset the numbering to match Creative Suite. So this was in time with Creative Suite 6, and I didn't purchase that because it wouldn't have actually got me a new release of Adobe Captivate, but it would have allowed me to get I think the last version of Photoshop CS6 and Photoshop CS, or what else, Illustrator or Dreamweaver, Flash, things like that. I don't miss it. I have that license. I don't use it obviously because I have a Creative Cloud license. But I think the closest thing that they have to it is the Technical Communications Suite, which is a product that is available to anyone. Let me see if I can find that. But it is an alternative way to get Adobe Captivate with some other software if you need it. It's not, yeah, it's called the Adobe Technical Communications Suite. And I'll just share my desktop here and show it to you here. So this, as you can see, it looks like they're getting ready for Adobe Technical Communication Suite 2020. But what it includes is a lot of the software that someone who is involved in communicating and training would use all at once here. So, for example, Frame Maker's included, RoboHelp, Adobe Captivate, you got Acrobat Pro DC is included, and Presenter 11.1. So there's a lot of software that is included here. And, you know, it doesn't include things like Photoshop or Premiere Pro, but, you know, the pricing is a little bit more competitive when you do it that way. So that's a possibility. I do miss the eLearning suite in that it was one purchase that gave you everything that you needed, but I think it conflicted a little bit with Adobe, like the larger Adobe's strategy towards software and being able to offer software as a service. So that's why it doesn't exist. Jane's saying she misses Flash. I think we're at that point right now, Jane, where Flash, I don't think you're going to miss it for very long. You certainly still can have Adobe Animate, which is what Flash evolved into, and that allows you to publish out to HTML5. But I think, and I was going to save this for a little bit later, but one of the things that I think it's safe to say I can confirm, I certainly know enough insider information that I'm confident, but nothing's officially been announced by the Adobe eLearning team to suggest that all of the legacy capabilities of publishing out to Shockwave Flash, SWF or SWIFT as some people say, are going to go away. All of that stuff is going to disappear. And so, because obviously Flash end of life, support for all Flash-based technology by Adobe is ending at the end of 2020. So clearly Adobe needs to remove that technical capability from Adobe Captivate as well. So I think you're going to find that it'll be a little bit easier to deal with Captivate because when you're publishing out, there won't be as many options. They won't have all this legacy support for Shockwave Flash technologies, making it more complicated than it needs to be. And a lot of people aren't aware of this, but it shows up in a lot of other places as well. An example would be when you publish your e-learning course as a PDF file. This is a feature that was built into Acrobat. It's no longer there. But there was a series of versions of Acrobat that allowed you to support Flash inside a PDF. They've since moved away from that, and while technically Captivate still allows you to publish this PDF, it really is just an embedded Flash file in your PDF. So that capability will go away. You can pretty much guarantee that the ability to publish a fully interactive e-learning course into a PDF file is going to go away. And with good reason too, because if you try to use that sort of stuff today, if you publish out Shockwave Flash and publish it to most websites that you would see e-learning supported on, you're going to get the sorts of errors that you might see. One of my favorite examples of an e-learning course, and I don't necessarily know what the authoring tool was to create this, but in the end, it was a Flash-based solution. Let me share my desktop with you again, and we'll just start this little e-learning course. And this is what we're seeing nowadays. Of course, Adobe Flash Player is blocked. I'm using the latest version of Chrome, but I think you would find that you'd have a similar experience with other browsers as well. And so this is something that I think we'll see quite quickly disappear from Adobe Captivate. So Pops Patu wrote, while capturing software simulations, wish we could just pause and check where we take incorrect screens or be able to delete them right there. While you can't delete them, you certainly can pause in the sense that you can pause and you know, do certain things and reset your screen and things like that. That's definitely available. What I would recommend, Pops, is to become familiar with all the shortcut keys that you can use while recording software simulation. Admittedly, I don't use them like I probably could or should, but if you go into your preferences window, and I'll just share my screen here, and if we go into the keys, you can actually pause and resume recording using the pause key on your keyboard. So that's something that is available today. And I don't know that there's much need to change software simulation. It does work pretty good. Jane is asking, has anyone done a comparison of Storyline to Captivate? What do we get in Storyline that we don't get in Captivate? That's actually a really good question, and the only thing I'll really say about that, Jane, is just really be careful when you find articles that compare Articulate Storyline with Adobe Captivate. First of all, the thing to remember about Articulate is that Storyline version 3, which is the most up-to-date version of the standalone product, is essentially dead software. There is never going to be Storyline version 4. In fact, if you read the blogs that the Articulate folks do, they always talk about trying to get people to switch over to Articulate 360, which includes Storyline 360, as well as their other products like Rise and so on. But I don't think you'll find, I think as time goes on, Captivate compared with Storyline version 3, Captivate's going to come out on top. There's a couple of little things, and I'm doing this because actually one thing Storyline is good at is sliders and knobs, so virtual sliders and knobs. But I don't worry about stuff like that too much because quite frankly, when I'm designing and developing e-learning, I'm always doing it from a perspective of achieving the goals of learning. And, you know, I can always replace a slider or knob with something else, something similar that can do the same thing for me. So I don't focus too much on actual object features because, you know, you can always rethink a learning interaction a little bit, tweak it a little bit to get it to fit within the authoring tool that you're using. I think you'll find that overall, big picture stuff, Captivate comes out on top for anyone who likes to get under the hood, anyone who likes to build their own interactions right almost from the code base up. Storyline is probably a little bit of an easier product to learn, not as steep of a learning curve, but you're not going to have as much control over things. I think the future is pretty well cemented for things like responsive design. I think moving forward, we all have one of these at this point. And, you know, would it be nice to take maybe your micro learning modules on a smartphone while you're commuting to and from work? Absolutely. Some people argue that, well, you know, usage of smartphone for training is so small. It's only 1% or 2% or something like that. Certainly less than 5%. But I think that's where people are confusing cause and effect, right? So is the reason that people only take training on their smartphones so low because of people like us not designing for responsive design? That's certainly a possibility and something to keep in mind. But I know that I've experienced this over the years where I've typically owned pretty high tech pieces of hardware, whether it be a smartphone, a tablet, or my full laptop, especially my full laptop. And I've always found it difficult to go into work and use a lesser piece of hardware, especially with computers. You know, when I worked for the Toronto International Airport as an e-learning instructional designer, I had to use their computer, which was terribly painful because those machines were locked down. They weren't very fast processors, didn't have very much memory. So the ability to just use the software from a day-to-day basis was difficult. And so I'm certainly part of, I guess I'm young enough to still be part of the generation that wants to use their own devices at work. And of course, you can't always, but certainly things like smartphones and tablets and stuff like that. I'd much rather sit in the coffee shop, complete my e-learning on my iPad, rather than to lug around some ugly laptop that the company provided me. So, but just make sure you, just a word of caution with comparisons between Storyline and Captivate. Make sure that it's a one-to-one comparison. So you should only be comparing Storyline 360, which is the current version, with the current version of Adobe Captivate, whatever that ends up being at any particular time. Pop says there are many reliable websites, but again, just be careful because I have seen comparisons and they're comparing an older version of Captivate with a newer version of Articulate or vice versa. Looks like Luke was talking about his feedback. He said he actually got a direct reply from Adobe when he mentioned his feature. And he did say that they're looking into it as well. So that's really good. Yeah, Articulate, Pops is adding, Articulate 360 still does not have any VR options. One of the features that I'm hoping for, and we'll talk about this time because Pops mentioned virtual reality. One of the great advantages of going to the Adobe Live events is that you get to see the sneak peeks. Much like they do at Adobe Max for the Creative Cloud stuff, the e-learning folks at Adobe also share what they're working on to get you excited about continuing to work with Adobe Captivate. When I first saw virtual reality, I saw obviously something they had mocked up that wasn't anywhere near ready to go to production. And of course, what we have today is really the first one or two steps into 360-degree images and video because it's relatively new to e-learning. But what they showed in a sneak peek was the idea, and I'm just grabbing a random object on my desk here, like this speaker here. So what they would do is they would have an object, this is just a Bluetooth speaker I have, an object floating in space. And of course, as you use your mouse to, let's say my finger is my mouse here, to click on an area and rotate the background, it would also rotate the 3D object in space as well, so that you could look around all sides of an object. So not only would it be 360 degrees for the background, but it would be 360 degrees for the objects as well. So I really think that would be a really welcome enhancement in the future of 360 degree or virtual reality training, because a lot of product training, and we see it on websites for new products coming out, new cameras and new laptops and stuff like that, where you can spin around the image not only of the background, which is what we have today, but the object in the foreground as well. And they demoed that actually very early on during one of those sneak peeks about a year or so ago, maybe a bit longer now. I'd really like to see that in a future release of Adobe Captivate. Let's see here. Nick is adding Adobe Captivate certificate available all over the world. Online attendance, greetings from Greece, more VR options. Yeah, I agree, Nick. The trick with the Adobe Captivate Specialist certification, I'm one of the teachers. So I can tell you that, the only sessions that I've taught are in Canada and the United States. But obviously there's a worldwide market for this. But like anything, for it to be profitable for Adobe, or at least break even for Adobe, they need a certain number of attendants. So, for example, I have some friends in Malta, and would be great. They would probably attend if there was an Adobe Captivate Specialist certification in Malta. Unfortunately, Malta is such a small country, and the total number of Adobe Captivate users in a country like Malta might be literally dozens of people, maybe no more. So it would be very difficult for them to set up, to pay for the conference space and hold an actual event like that. But certainly in larger countries, I think you can expect to see that in 2020 and beyond. We'll see, of course, I'm sure they're still looking at that. The next one is going to be in Washington, D.C. I haven't been formally invited to be one of the instructors, but if past experience would be any indicator, I will probably be there as one of the instructors. So hopefully, if you're in North America, totally worthwhile doing, especially for the conference sessions, because at the conference sessions, rather than being $800 for the certification, it's only $499 US. So you get it for a little cheaper. And you also get to attend the following day's conference and learn a whole bunch of other things to further enhance your training. I really recommend doing the full 2-day group session at a conference. So it's really worthwhile here. Working on Storyline 360, one feature is the review. This is working perfect for me collaborating with SMEs. Yeah, the Captivate review capabilities, not the best. What I've done, and you can look at YouTube videos that I've done. Take a look at, do a search on YouTube for Adobe Captivate and Amazon S3 or Amazon AWS, and you'll see videos that I've done on how I upload my content to a web server that's basically free, and share my content with my stakeholders. Another good resource, and maybe what I'll do is I'll put this on screen as well. We'll just bring up a browser here and just say, do a little bit of a plug for my friends over at Review My eLearning. This is a great site. If you can publish it as a SCORM file, you can upload it to reviewmyelearning.com, and pricing even includes a free option for those who are just sharing their e-learning with a small group of people. Maybe it's a single course, but you can get into full-blown pricing that supports entire groups and entire organizations as well. But a really great resource for sharing your e-learning, but also getting feedback. You actually give your learners the ability to write feedback specific to every slide in your course, so you can really pull back and get a lot of info from your stakeholders and know what you need to change exactly when you're working with that. So. Lost my chat window. Hang on one second here. John Hunter, restricted systems is a serious concern. Many eDev use corporate systems that are business machines versus developer machines. A version that would work on lower CPU resources would be great. I think, John, you'll see that probably, because I think one of the things that we're moving towards. Again, I think the next version of Captivate won't have all this support for legacy stuff, which is what makes it run so slowly, because you're coming up with new features and new capabilities, but you're also supporting all this old stuff that maybe fewer and fewer people are using. But out of fear of losing the customer base or whatever, this stuff is clung to the software and made it bulky and difficult to work with. So hopefully, what we'll see in the next release. Just to give you guys a sense too, like I didn't show this already, but I happen to have Adobe Xd running on my computer as well. And just to show you what Xd looks like, one of the things I saw in the feedback was, a nice new clean interface, a nice simple elegant user interface, instead of something that looks like it comes from the past, the software past that we think of when we think of older software. But the demo I saw in Las Vegas this year, they were running a pre-release, obviously very early pre-release of Adobe Captivate, shall we say 2020 edition. And it looked a lot like Adobe Xd. You still have your properties inspector over here on the right hand side, and there was toolbars across the top and down the side, similar to what Adobe Xd does. And the other thing too that's really exciting about Adobe Xd is it now offers a new type of responsive resize, which I'd really like to see them incorporate in Captivate as well. I love fluid boxes, don't get me wrong. I think fluid boxes are a great way to do responsive design, but wouldn't it be great if you could just draw it out on your screen and it just worked? It's just almost magical. Actually, ironically, fluid boxes were once called magic boxes before they settled on the name fluid boxes. And I think there was something else that already used magic boxes, which is why they didn't use it. But so, hopefully we'll see a nice, clean, light interface, one that's easy to run. Obviously, there are certain applications, like when you start getting into video and virtual reality, that's going to take some processing power. There's no two ways about it. You can move some of that stuff up to the cloud, but that's, again, you can of course do some things to improve that, but again, designing and developing e-learning is something that does require a great deal of resources. There's no two ways about that. So I agree. It's a lot of people think that it's something as simple as PowerPoint, but there's often more to it than that. So hopefully we'll see that. For 360-degree object view, Matterport cameras do that. I'm not sure what Matterport is, Jane, but that might be interesting. Perhaps if someone from Adobe is listening in on this live stream, they can make note of that and see if that's something that they can incorporate. Jane says for reviewing, we use the CC function and export CC and send it as a Word document to subject matter experts with an edit section and upload it to the element. Oh, that's interesting. It's an interesting way to do that. That's kind of different, but I guess, hey, if it works for you, then it's great. The other thing that I'd like to see, and I'm just going to share this with you, but also share it again if Adobe happens to be listening. I've provided this feedback before, but I know sometimes feedback does get lost between the cracks. There's a couple of things that I'd like to see in the next version of Adobe Captivate. The first is the default fluid boxes. So let me just share my desktop with you again. And I happen to have a responsive design project here. And I'm just going to add a bunch of fluid boxes. And my experience has been is that more often than not, whether it's a column or if it's rows of fluid boxes, the default wrap style for me doesn't work. I find that wrap to next row is often what I might choose in a very small subset of circumstances. So for example, let's just do let's do a fresh slide here, and we'll just do a blank slide at this point here. I might do something like this, where I choose some vertical fluid boxes, and maybe there's a placeholder at the top where my title will go, and maybe closed captioning and navigation controls down at the bottom here. But much of my content will be in the middle here. Now on desktop mode, you know, maybe I've got enough content in the center of this particular middle content fluid box to support the content to be side by side. And, you know, what I want to have happen is that when it does get too small, the right hand fluid box will drop below the bottom fluid box. And that is, this situation here is about the only time I would want that. The rest of the time, I'm going to set my wrap to next row option to squeeze in a row instead, because I want the content, especially things like navigation controls along the bottom. I only want one row of items there. So for me, that's going to be crucial. So while I don't think they need to change this just for me, because of course the wrap options, you know, everyone is unique, everyone is different, but I would like the ability to go into my preferences, much as you would do if you wish to add, for example, a wrap point, enabling wrap point for all your fluid boxes. That's the percentage at what point a fluid box wraps to another row. Maybe right below it would be a drop-down selector similar to these here, where I can choose my default wrap option. I would love that. It would make fluid box responsive design much more rapid for me. I could knock out fluid box responsive design, I don't know, probably 50% faster than I do today. So that's definitely a feature that I would like to see happen as well. The other thing, and this is related to fluid box responsive design, and this gets a lot of people confused. I would like to see live font scaling in edit mode, right? As it stands right now, you're designing your e-learning course, and let's say you pick a font size of 20 points for a particular you know, text object, whether it be a caption or a shape used with text. And when you're looking at it on your edit mode, actually in Adobe Captivate, not preview, not publish, it would be nice to see the font scaling work as expected, so that you wouldn't have to wait until you published or previewed that course to see what the challenges are going to be with the amount of text on screen. Similarly, I'd also like to see a much more robust scrolling text option too. And I'll go back to my desktop here. And right now, not many people remember that this is something that is available to you, but I can go into the interactions toolbar icon, and I can go into learning interactions. And one of the learning interactions that is still available to us, that many have been deprecated, but you know, you do have the ability, where is it now? Let me see if I can find it here. Scrolling text. So this is great if I have a bunch of text. So if I just type in a bunch of text, and I'm just going to duplicate this a whole bunch of times to give you an idea, this is great, right? I can have entire paragraphs of content appear within this widget, if you will, or learning interaction as it's sometimes called. And when it's on an area of the screen that is too small to be supported, you get the scroll bar and you can scroll up and down, and it works reasonably well. Let's just do a quick preview of the next 5 slides so you can see what I mean. So it's not really showing here, but maybe if I shrink it down, let's make it way bigger here. Let's go in and double click on this and Maybe if we make the font size super large, it will definitely show us the scroll. That's really all I want to show you, but let's just do, sometimes you may need to, yeah. I'm going to uncheck maintain aspect ratio here. And let's just do a preview. Next 5 slides. Again, this might look totally fine on edit mode here, but when you're running it here, there of course is our scrollable text. Now, it's fine. It does what I needed to do for responsive design. You know, maybe on a desktop screen it doesn't even scroll, but on the smartphone screen you need the scrolling capability. The disadvantage, though, is I can't have any text formatting beyond choosing a font and a font size. I can't have bulleted text. I can't do anything creative with the text. It's just plain text, like the text you would have in Text Edit or Notepad or something like that. So it's very limited. If they could give me an ability to actually have real robust text, like you would put in a text caption with color and different formatting and things like that, then this would be a useful feature. But as it stands right now, it's not really that helpful. So, you know, I'm looking for that. I don't know if enough people are also looking for the same thing. Hopefully they are. Let's take a look at what other comments we have in the chat window here. Where were we? It's always tricky for me to remember where we left off. Yeah, so we can even export a course PDF. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you're referring to Jane's comments for reviewing and stuff like that. Just remember that the course PDF, if you're publishing your course as a PDF document, that's Flash and that's going away. And that's the other thing too. Like, I think a lot of this will be, a lot of the new Adobe Captivate, whatever it ends up looking like, will be nice and clean and crisp, because all of that old stuff, publishing as a standalone exe, is also Flash based. So, and that's why you can't do it for responsive design. So, yeah, so Pops is saying the closed captioning is scalable, but again, it would be nice to see it in edit mode rather than, I don't know how they do that, because that's a completely different subsystem. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to know exactly what you're working with. I like to throw people one sentence at a time with my closed captioning. So I keep it relatively short anyway. You know, and that way I don't need to really adjust the closed captioning window too much. Yeah, scroll option for CC, but then it wouldn't be accessible. So that sort of defeats the whole purpose. You need to be able to put it on screen and give users the same experience who are listening to narration, right? When I listen to narration, it doesn't require me to interact. So closed captioning, other than turning it on, is a great option for persons with disabilities. So having scroll for closed captioning kind of defeats the purpose, but I get where you're coming from for sure. So that's really the main stuff I wanted to cover today. Again, you know, if you guys have ideas you'd like to see in the next release, go ahead and put them in this chat window. I've invited Adobe to look at this live stream. I was kind of hoping someone would join from Adobe. One of the challenges is that the engineering team behind Adobe Captivate live and work in India. So, you know, for them, it's the middle of the night rather than the middle of the day. So it's a little more challenging for them. But they do watch my videos, and they do see what people write in the comments and in the chat windows. So if you're watching this live, by all means, you know, pop in some comments in the live chat. But if you're watching the recorded version of this session, down below are comments that you can put your comments on. Throw your ideas, throw your suggestions. But don't forget, too, like it's super important to always remember. If we go to my YouTube channel here for a moment, and we'll just take a look at any random video of mine. Just let me, yeah, Pooja's a good source. My only criticism of the evangelists, and I count Pooja in with them, is that they're kind of a go-between. If you have the opportunity to actually use the form that is available, let me show you, and I'll just share my desktop with again here. And we'll just go to any random one of my videos here. We'll just open that up, but I'll just pause the video. And we go down to the description. So you'll see that I've provided a bunch of links. I've got my links. I got some links to gear that I use. And then down here are the Adobe specific links. So if you're interested in going to the Adobe eLearning conference in Washington, D.C., I've got a link to that. The Captivate's certificate, it's actually, I think it's, yeah, so here's the version for the specialist certification, which will be, the next one is also Washington, D.C. If you wish to contact tech support, there's a link for that here. The last link in this group of links here is the Ask Adobe link here. This is for requesting a feature or reporting a bug. When you click on that, it will bring you to this page here. Just select Adobe Captivate from the list. You could also provide feedback for other products as well. And then fill out this form. And you'll see that there's a point where you can select whether this is a feature request or an actual bug report. And I do a lot of bug reports when I'm telling them something isn't working or whatever, but I do a lot of feature requests. So fill out the form as completely as you can. And in the case of a feature request, you want to tell them how would you like the feature to work and why is this feature important to you. And so, for example, if you wanted to communicate, you know, that you wanted the ability to set your own default wrap style in Fluidbox responsive design, you could write out here, I'd like it to be in the preferences window. I'd like it to be a drop-down selector where I can choose one of the 4 different types of wrap styles that are available and make that my default style moving forward. And then, of course, it's important to say why this feature is important to you. For me, for example, that's important to me because it's going to increase my, decrease my development time when it comes to responsive design, or increase my efficiency or proficiency, if you will. So that's definitely going to be a factor here. Pops was mentioning here, let's just go back to the webcam view for a moment here. So a few comments that came through. One of my clients had a major concern as to why they could not be a scroll for CC like Articulate Storyline. Yeah, it actually would be, so if a user has to do something that an able-bodied person, like actually, I think Storyline's scrollable closed captioning feature kind of breaks the rules a little bit. So you may want to actually consult with 508 compliance specialists on that. But in either case, you know, it's definitely something that you have to deal with. If they could make it work a little bit better for responsive design, I certainly would get behind that 100%. So what else here? What will be covered at the DC conference? What do I tell my manager as a reason to go? Yeah, I mean, this is professional development. If you work in a training department, your learning and development manager should have no problem filling this out, because of course or agreeing to do it, you need to focus on, a good example would be the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, Stephen Covey's book. Number 7 itself, I believe, is to sharpen your saw. From time to time, all the best carpenters in the world need to, it's a metaphor, of course, sharpen their saw. Otherwise, they will not be very good at carpentry anymore. So just like them, we as e-learning designer developers need to have access to the latest information, the latest training to continually professionally develop ourselves. There is typically, if you watch the site, again, you can get to it within the comments of all of my videos or the description of all of my videos. Go to the site. Typically, Adobe puts up, if not now, they may have it soon, even a form letter that you can use to convince your manager to come. But a couple of things to consider about this conference over other e-learning conferences that do exist throughout the United States and Canada. This conference itself is absolutely free. The training portion is an extra fee. So if you wish to become a Captivate specialist who's actually certified, has the credential, that's separate from this. But the conference itself is completely complimentary. So for both days, if you decide to go as a Captivate specialist and get your certificate and also attend the conference, your breakfast and lunch will be provided by Adobe. The conference itself on day 2 is completely complimentary. So you can go to all these breakout sessions. You can hear a fantastic keynote speaker and find out what's coming so that you can be better prepared for all the new features that are coming out in future versions of Adobe Captivate. The only thing that obviously Adobe doesn't pay for is your registration to the certificate program. That's $4.99, and obviously your travel and accommodation costs. I booked a hotel in Washington, and I'm going to be staying a little bit away from the main hotel, but I got a hotel for $150 a night. And I've got a reservation already for that in anticipation that I will be at the conference. I haven't been asked yet, and that's the thing about Adobe. Sometimes they wait until the last minute to invite their speakers and their instructors, but because I anticipated, I went ahead and booked the hotel. I can cancel it if necessary. But I would do that. I'd go in, book your hotel, get a spot, make sure you got a place to stay. And you can always cancel it if you do it through Expedia or something like that. And then just start researching flights if need be. Or I know a few people that live in Virginia. They just drive up for the day, pay for parking. Parking won't be validated. I can tell you that for sure. But there are opportunities for you to go to this. And similarly, in the fall, if you can't make it to the Washington one, they do hold a pretty big conference of a similar nature in Las Vegas in usually October. So that's another option as well. So yeah, John mentioned he went to the DC conference last year, and the Captivate Specialist was an intense 8 hours of focused concentration. But the e-learning conference the next day was fantastic. The thing about the conference, the Captivate Specialist certification as well, Jane, if you're interested in going, you're going to get at-home work to do prior to arriving the day of the workshop. So you'll have lots of opportunity to prepare for it. It is intense. It's more like about 6 hours of actual work, 6.5 hours. But, you're going to be there the full day. So, and part of that time is writing the exam as well. So let's see here. Yeah, the actual conference itself is at the Marquee this year. It was at the other Marriott previously. And I think you'll probably see if we are expecting a new release of Adobe Captivate in time for the conference, which is a possibility, then the Captivate Specialist certification will be updated to reflect those new capabilities and features. So um, I would make sure that when you do come to the conference, if you're attending as someone seeking their specialist certification, you're going to need to bring your own laptop and have a copy of Captivate, whatever the latest version is, installed. It can be a trial copy. It doesn't have to be fully licensed for you to take advantage of all the features that we're going to be teaching you. But you should have a 30-day trial of the software installed on your computer. Most IT departments, even if you're using an older version of Captivate, can help you get that done, even if it's just for a short-term basis. So, guys, we've come to the top of the hour. In fact, a little bit over that. So hopefully you've got some good information out of today. Again, you can find links to all the stuff that we talked about today in the description of the video. If you're, again, viewing the recording of this, you can put your comments in the comments below. And again, I'm going to try to get Adobe to look at those to make sure that they add whatever consideration they need for the new release of Adobe Captivate. So get your ideas out there. Take advantage of the links that are there. Also, other ideas you can put in the comments below. And once again, as always, I want to thank you for joining today's e-learning live stream. Have a great day, guys.